Hello, my name is Ameliah and this is my book report for an English 401 course. The book I chose to do a report on was called Around the Writer's Block, Using Brain Science to Solve Writer's Resistance. This book was written by Roseanne Bain and was published in August of 2012 by Penguin Publishing. As a writer, I found this book to be tremendously helpful, and I would like to share some of Miss Bain's insights with you in the hopes that they will also be a help to you. The main focus of the book was about recognizing resistance that often will stop writers from continuing on in their writing. There are three main types of resistance identified, and they are freezing, fighting, and fleeing. Writer's block is a classic case of freezing, wherein the writer's mind will not allow them to think of what else to write. Fighting often occurs when the writer fights themselves. They think that their writing is not good enough or that the project is too much for them to tackle. Fleeing occurs when the writer allows himself or herself to create distractions, such as getting on social media sites or obligating themselves to help with other events. But the good news with all of these forms of resistance is that the brain has plasticity. This means that we as humans can actually change the way that we think. So on this point, Miss Bain claims that if you ever want to write well, you just have to write. Even if you write badly, if you aren't willing to push through this by continuing to write, you won't possibly improve. This follows the thinking of Anne Lamott with her concept of terrible first drafts. They have to be rewritten before the drafts can become good. Miss Bain claims that there are three habits that are essential for a writer to maintain. These are process, product time, and self-care. Process is simply allowing yourself to do something enjoyable without a specific aim in mind other than just letting yourself relax. This activity will actually put you in the creative flow, which means that when you do sit down to write later, it will probably be easier for you. Studies have shown that doing process actually helps you think creatively. So examples of process include something as simple as daydreaming or playing an instrument, coloring, drawing, or writing, anything without a specific goal in mind. So actually knitting and sewing are other good options for process. Miss Bain recommends doing process for 15 to 30 minutes a day, 5 to 6 days a week. The second habit that is obviously essential for writers is product time. This is the time spent writing and working on your story. It could include brainstorming, researching, and outlining your story, as well as the actual drafting and editing that must be involved. Some writers keep track of their product time by word count. For example, Stephen King tries to write about 2,000 words a day. But if you are having trouble with writing that much and getting that much accomplished daily, Miss Bain suggests shooting for a magical 15 minutes a day for at least 5 to 6 days a week. This doesn't mean that it has to only be 15 minutes a day, but that it should be 15 minutes minimum daily. This is effective because as a writer, it will not allow you to become overwhelmed, and you won't dread writing each day if you know you only have to write for 15 minutes. Included in her portion on product time, Miss Bain mentions the 6 steps of the writing process, which are first insight, saturation, incubation, illumination, verification, and hibernation. First insight is when the idea first strikes the writer, and saturation is when the writer begins researching to figure out how to bring that idea about. Brainstorming and charting out characters is another aspect of saturation. Incubation is when the first problems arise and the writer does not yet know how to solve them. This is the period of unseen growth, wherein the writer should just be patient because the solution will eventually come. Then comes illumination. This is the epiphany moment, when the writer realizes how to solve the problem or problems. After this is verification, where the writer flashes out the illumination. This is the drafting stage. The last stage is hibernation, where the writer lets the piece just sit for a while and then comes back to it to edit. Stephen King has mentioned the writer should probably let a piece sit for several months before trying to edit it after the initial draft. In our 4-genre textbook, the writing process was most clearly seen in the piece Composing Teacher Training by Marie Elizabeth Pope. The last habit that Miss Bain suggests is self-care. This includes sleeping, exercise, meditation, time to focus, and play. Sleep is obviously important because it helps keep your mind alert, which will allow concentration in writing. Exercise is important because it helps release stress, it increases creativity and problem-solving skills. Meditation assists the mind in focusing, and this is related to time and focus, where the writer needs to learn to not multitask and to instead focus on just one thing, such as the writing. It will help train the writer to not let distractions get in the way of writing. Lastly, Miss Bain suggests play. This is like process in that there is no specific goal in mind. This actually allows the mind to learn how to think creatively as well, which makes it beneficial in the writing process. Miss Bain also discusses ritual. Most writers have certain rituals they perform for the writing process. For example, Stephen King likes to play rock music while he writes, but Mary Sarton only likes to play music from the 18th century when she writes. Virginia Woolf only wrote standing up, while Edith Wharton only wrote lying down. There is actually a legitimate reason as to why ritual can help writers, Miss Bain claims. Studies show that when two neurons fire together repeatedly, they are wired together and connected. So if you smell lemons every time you sit down to write, then your brain wires the idea of the citrus scent with creativity. This could actually make the smell of lemons help you in the writing process then, because the experience creates connections. So Miss Bain suggests creating a writing ritual for yourself. She also suggests keeping a writer's log. This will help the writer to realize the amount of work that they are actually accomplishing, which will assist the writer in continuing to make progress with their writing. Also, rewarding yourself can be helpful if you're working on a part of the writing process that is so distasteful you cannot move on. If you must find a way to make the part of writing bearable through using a reward, Miss Bain suggests that you utilize it. Another beneficial thing for writers is to resolve resistance. This comes through 4 steps, and those steps are recognition, relaxation, respect, and redirect. As a writer, if you know how to recognize resistance, you can move past it. Forms of resistance can be perfectionism, distraction, hypercriticism of yourself as a writer, or even not being willing to accept criticism from others. After the writer recognizes they are, in fact, resisting writing, they should just try to relax. They could do this by meditation or slowing down their breathing patterns. Next, they need to respect the fact that there is probably a legitimate reason why they are resisting writing. When they can assess this, as well as how to get past the resistance, they can redirect. This is essentially focusing on the positives of the process rather than on the negatives. Writers need to recognize what they do well so they can balance this out with what they should improve. One of the last things Miss Bain mentions is that writers should be accountable to someone. This is mostly helpful if they are accountable to another writer. This way, the writers can report to one another what they have been doing and keep each other informed on if they have been keeping up with the writing process. So all the above mentioned things were concepts emphasized in Miss Bain's book, Around the Writer's Block. I hope that they have been as helpful to you as they have been to me. Thank you for watching, and happy writing!